Hi, welcome to Lucas Makes Games, a YouTube channel where I develop and show you my development of video games, both for your entertainment and as a professional portfolio. Pikmin is a series of open-world strategy and exploration games. The first Pikmin game came out for the GameCube in 2001, and a sequel, Pikmin 2, came out in 2004. Pikmin 2 was the first game I ever had for the GameCube, and is still one of my favorite games of all time. Because I only acquired a copy of Pikmin 1 as an adult, and never got a Nintendo Switch to play Pikmin 3, Pikmin 2 is still what I think of as Pikmin. The Game Boy Advance was Nintendo's flagship handheld device after the Game Boy Color and before the DS. Over its lifetime, Nintendo developed many excellent entries for the GBA from its signature IPs. The Minish Cap, Superstar Saga, Metroid Fusion, Pokémon Ruby, and many others. While apparently Nintendo did attempt to develop a Pikmin game for the GBA, author game director Shigeru Miyamoto was never satisfied with the development versions, and the next entry would be Pikmin 3 for the Wii U in 2012, nearly a decade after Pikmin 2. In this video, we're going to answer the question, what if Nintendo had developed a Pikmin game for the Game Boy Advance? What might it have looked like? How would it have played? What might the story have been? Oh, and for expediency and because I want this to be a completable project I can show potential employers and not something I spend months or years tinkering with and slowly improving, I'm going to try and make that game in 7 days.
So, Pikmin is a game of exploration where you land on a planet as Captain Olimar, and then you discover the Pikmin on the planet and use them to recover items to rebuild your ship to escape the planet. So, mostly the gameplay revolves around exploring the environment with your Pikmin, defeating enemies, and then accumulating more Pikmin. So on day 1 and 2, all I really wanted to do was lay out the basic functionality for the Captain, the Pikmin, the enemies, and the accumulation of more Pikmin. So you can see I have the Captain object, which all the Pikmin objects are following, and then the enemy objects, which are either alert or eating, walking, or dead. And also they can throw the Pikmin. So you throw the Pikmin at the enemies, and they attack the enemies, and the enemies slowly die, and the enemies can throw you off. Obviously this looks a lot more basic in 2D than it does in fancy 3D. Once you've defeated enemies, you can throw your Pikmin at them, the Pikmin will carry them back to the onion will produce a seedling, and you can pluck that seedling to produce another Pikmin, and thus the virtuous cycle continues. This is probably making a lot more sense if you've ever actually played a Pikmin game. On day 3, I wanted to work with the environment, so I added pathfinding for the Pikmin and the enemies. The enemies will no longer chase Pikmin unless they can see them around walls. Pikmin won't walk through walls when bringing the corpses back to the onion, and also won't walk through walls when meeting the Captain. It doesn't look like much, but there's a lot of additional functionality needed for pathfinding. For instance, if they were in the bottom right corner, they would go around all the walls to come back to the onion rather than going through a straight line through the walls. I also added a second color of Pikmin, the red ones at the top, which you can see. This is a core element of the Pikmin gameplay, using different colored Pikmin for different problems. For instance, some enemies require a specific color of Pikmin, so I added a red enemy that you need the red Pikmin to defeat. Ergo, you have to go acquire the red Pikmin and then defeat the red enemy, rather than just going with the green Pikmin to the red enemy. This is a sprite sheet by Pick on Spriters Resource, and this is a sprite sheet by Pikmin Fan 1 Million on DeviantArt, and I knew I wasn't going to do any art for this project because this is more of a programming thing, but here you can see I started using the art in the project, so it looks a lot better. Obviously there's some issues with transitioning from the circular graphics to the more advanced ones, and you have to set up masks and collision stuff and blah 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 blah, and it's a little bit more elaborate, some more coding was necessary, and it's still a bit rough, so some polishing needs to be done. Also decided to branch out a bit and start programming other parts of the game, so this is the initial shot of the main menu, and this is an initial shot of the opening cutscene, with the initial version of the dialog box and text at the bottom. On day 5, things were really starting to come together. This is a sprite sheet from the Minish Cap by Nintendo, and these are what I was going to use for the environment, which, as you can see here, is starting to look a lot better. There's some UI at the top and the left, the dialogue as a portrait, and things are in scale, matching the Game Boy Advance's resolution of 240 by 160. As you can see, I set up some tutorial dialogues so we can deliver some information to the player, and overall things are just looking a lot better. This is the map select screen where after the day you go back into orbit, and then in the morning this is where you select the map you're going to play on during the day. At the beginning there's only one map, but as you advance you unlock more. These are more sprites from the Minish cap, and these are custom versions that I edited together for my environment level sprites. This took most of day 6, even though I had most of the functionality set up. Just making the art took quite a bit of time because I'm pretty bad with art. And here we are on day 7, and I'm just going to play through the entirety of the game that I completed and do a voiceover of my various thoughts as you watch the 25 minutes of gameplay that came out of 7 days of work. So first things first, obviously the game isn't 100% completed. It's not like you can ship it out because it's ready. It's more of all the functionality is completed, pretty much all the programming is done at this point. All you would have to do to complete the game would be to add additional maps, levels, and enemies.
Audio.
Spice up the main menu along with, another few days of polish and tweaks, and I think, 2 or 3 weeks and the game really would be finished. But in terms of 7 days of work, I think I've done the vast majority of the work necessary to complete the game, and I'm pretty happy with what I accomplished in those 7 days. I think I'm still going to set the title of the YouTube video to Made a Game in 7 Days or something like that, which is pretty clickbaity, but I mean, this is YouTube, and if you watched it this far, then the clickbait worked, and I think it's about as egregious as Mr. Beast titles, so whatever. I'd also like to give a really big thanks to everybody whose art I used in this project. All the links are in the description to various sites and users and names and whatnot. Thank you very much, everybody, even though you'll probably never realize that I did this. A brief side note, more on the interesting from personal reasons rather than professional portfolio kind of thing, is that I used DALL-E 2, the free version, to make the main menu graphic, and it looks pretty good. I was going to use DALL-E 2 to make all the art for this game, but unfortunately it's not quite there yet. But, obviously the direction we're going, within a couple of years, you can just make art for anything on the fly, and it'll be really cool to see what kind of games and game development come out of that sort of easy accessibility to high quality art. So at the beginning of the video we talked about what the story for a Game Boy Advance Pikmin game might look like, and for this particular project I only had access to sprites for Captain Olimar and the ship from Pikmin 2. So obviously that makes it a game with a story about Captain Olimar, but I think if I was a game director with unlimited access to money, I would have set this story to revolve around a new protagonist and ship. So in my head, we're watching Captain Suki, not Captain Olimar, landing on an alien planet for the first time and getting exposition for the first time, rather than Captain Olimar hearing about Pikmin all over again for a second time. There's really no room for a story in between Pikmin 1 and 2, and Pikmin 1 isn't really amenable to a prequel, so I think I would set my Game Boy Advance Pikmin game somewhere in between the two and make it about an entirely new captain and new ship landing on an alien planet for the first time. If you watch the video, you can see that I set up some story beats about golden Pikmin. You'll see a golden Pikmin if you watch to the very end, and the game story seems to be going in the direction of, oh Captain, we need to recharge the battery, we need to get more golden Pikmin, let's go collect all the golden Pikmin, and boom, you have a MacGuffin for the story. I also want to just briefly talk about difficulty. Obviously difficulty is something that can be hard to get right in video games. You're trying to strike a balance between not too hard and not too easy. So this, I don't know how I'm making it look, but I played the game many times over at this point, and it was pretty easy. But any speedrunner will make any game look very easy. I got my dad to play this game, and he had quite a bit of difficulty. It wasn't impossible for him, but it definitely was a lot more difficult for him than it was for me. So I think the difficulty is about right, but obviously you could either add more enemies, add less enemies, subtract enemies, take enemies away, god damn it, and various things. In addition to being the first project I've made specifically, for a professional portfolio, this is the first video I've ever made, even for personal purposes, and it was pretty fun to work on. I'd never used video editing software like Lightworks before, but it turned out to be pretty idiot-proof, even though, as you can probably tell, a bit rough in some places because I've never done this before. I started off using a free video editor called Kapwing, whose watermark you can see earlier on in the video, before I realized it was just easier to download an actual piece of software onto my computer rather than use a web-based editor. So we're getting close to the point where I'm going to stop narrating the video, so I I'd just like to take this moment to say thanks for watching. It would be really cool if this YouTube channel could grow and I could make more games and you found this entertaining and left a like, a comment, and subscribe so the algorithm, lifts it up. I don't really want to shill for my channel, but a channel like a cooking channel where, you get to watch people make fancy dishes, except instead of fancy dishes, they're cool little retro art games, would be a cool enterprise to follow up on. But, if not that, then at least I can send this out with a resume to employers and say, look, I can make a game, I swear. The rest of the video is just going to be me completing the overworld map and 2 dungeon maps, and love you guys, thank you very much.